All right, nice. Vibe coding has obviously become a huge thing in recent months, just with the rise of LLM, the various tools that allow you to build applications end to end. I started using ChatGPT probably close to 2 years ago and used it to help me develop a prototype of an app that I was working on, which was mind blowing at the time. I thought that was insane. Like it was able to give me most of the code that I needed to basically copy and paste into my code base and make the application run. And I had a little bit of, I would say, like beginner to intermediate level application development experience. Kind of knew what I was doing, but ChatGPT was able to help me really get my ideas into the world. And since then, it's been amazing to see the evolution of these tools. And I started using Claude probably about a year ago. I started to like that LLM better for a lot of my use cases, and that was amazing. And then I tried Cursor like 4 or 5 months ago, and having your or actually I tried GitHub Copilot first, and I tried that one and Cursor, and having your coding assistant essentially right in your IDE was another mind-blowing moment for me. Really loved that process. I still use a cursor all the time. I'm actually going to use it as part of this demo today. And then one of the recent ones I've heard about is Claude Code. It basically is a coding agent, but it allows you to bring it directly into your terminal. So a place that most developers are already familiar with. Again, I'm not a professional software engineer. I'm more on the data analytics and data engineering side of things, but it's been pretty amazing what these tools have started to unlock me to do. I had this idea for just a fun Wordle app for SQL learning, basically, like learning different SQL syntax. And so the gist of it is that you get a new SQL problem each day based on your kind of proven experience level, and then you get points based on how quickly and accurately you solve the problem. So I wanted to have Claude Code help me do that so that I could test out the features of Claude Code, and I'll show you a little bit about how we did that. So first things first, you just got to install Claude Code via the terminal. So I've already done that, so I won't go through that. You need to either sign up for a Claude Code account, or if you already have a Claude account, you can integrate that so that it's all connected to your existing Claude account. But I'll kind of walk through where I've gotten so far with this application, and then I thought it could be fun just to do a little bit of live testing in this video. So I'll go, I think, let's see if I can get all the way back to the initial prompt. It's possible that I can't. I may not be able to, but the gist of it is I I basically provided Claude with the context of what I want this program to do. So it's a SaaS platform for daily SQL challenges with ELO-based ratings, team competitions, and subscription-based access. I consulted Claude through the command line, like what the architecture should look like and what the key components of the application should be. And then it helped me develop this really nice markdown file that Claude Code then uses to reference and uses like the point of view for all the decisions that it continues to make throughout the process. So one thing I love about having Claude Code is that your code base is still right in front of your face. So tools like Lovable and Replit are amazing too, and you can go in and edit the code there as well. But I like how Claude is natively accessible in your code editor. So it starts to put in, it gives setup command instructions, it gives some database management instructions, it gives the user a really great understanding of how it's going to develop the database that's required to run this application, the key relationships in that database, how it's going to develop the API. Like it's pretty amazing how in depth all of the planning goes. And this is a relatively simple concept, and this file is not massive, but like you can get Claude to generate some pretty amazing like application resource documents, I guess I would call them. So I'll open that terminal back up. So what's really cool about the way that you interact with Claude is as you're working through problems, it'll basically generate this to-do list. So it's made itself its own reference point of items that need to be ticked off the list to solve the prompts that you're working towards. So for example, The first step was set up a React project with TypeScript and Tailwind CSS for the styling. Create an auth system, so login and registration screens. Build dashboard layout and navigation. It started to get into building some of the actual features of the application. And see if I can get down. I'm going to go a little bit further to where I ran into a certain issue. Cool. All right. So one of the things that I struggled with, so I'll actually show you where Claude got me to. So Claude basically got me to this functional application that has some fairly basic UI so far. I'm going to work on improving it even right now, but it's got a dashboard, it's got today's challenge, we've got some sort of error that we'll have to solve, so that'll be fun. It doesn't have history yet. That'll be one of the next screens we work on. It doesn't have a leaderboard yet. But the idea is that you come into today's challenge and you've gotten a prompt. So find the total sales amount and number of items sold for each product category. These are the required columns and like description of what they are, how the columns should be ordered. Obviously, there's room to improve the user interface here, but it's pretty amazing that it's already working. And then it shows me the database schema that I'm working with. So in a future iteration of this, I would like the user to be able to interact with the underlying tables before they begin to solve the challenge, or at least look at them before they begin to solve the challenge, but this does for now. So concept is you click Start Challenge, you write your SQL solution, and boom, you submit it. So one of the things that was giving me pause when I first started this was that I submitted a perfectly good solution, but it got flagged as incorrect. The reason was in the initial setup, Claude Code basically set it so that it was looking for an exact one-to-one syntax match. And anybody who's worked with SQL before knows that's not going to work 100% of the time. There are several ways to solve the same problem, even for very basic queries. What happened was Claude basically iterated and worked on a solution that would allow us to validate the SQL code based on the outputs rather than the inputs. And there are some drawbacks to that approach as well, but at the end of the day, if you're able to generate the exact correct results that are expected by the query, then it's highly likely that you've written the query in a sufficient manner. And so it's pretty cool how Claude basically searches your code base and then literally will go in and make adjustments to the code so that you are able to address any issues that you might encounter. So let's just test out something live right now. So let's go back, let's click that Start Challenge. Okay, that's working. Let's click today's challenge from here. Okay, that's working. So I'm not sure why we got that brief error screen earlier, but let's work on building this history page. So I'm going to say, let's work on building the challenge history page. What is your plan and how do you recommend we proceed? Please confirm with me before executing any changes in the code base. I like to prompt it that way so that I can see the plan of attack that the agent is going to work through. Obviously, from a syntax perspective, this thing's way smarter than I am, but I might have particular opinions on the way that it's going to structure that development. So I'll let Claude think. One of the things I've noticed is that Claude seems to take a little bit longer to think through these problems than some of the other AI agents or coding assistants that I've worked with. Part of it might be that a tool like Cursor will start to answer your question like in real time before it's fully baked. So maybe that's just part of what I'm seeing. But this is a pretty great example of how Claude will spit out the planned approach. So it says, let's plan the challenge history page. Here's my recommended approach. So we're going to need some back-end requirements. So an API endpoint that already exists that'll allow us to grab this data, some details on how that API needs to work. And then we're going to have front-end components that need to be built. So a list of all challenge attempts. We're going to need a component that handles just displaying a single history item with related score, time taken, correctness, overall performance statistics. That's a really great idea. I love that. Filters component. That's cool. I didn't think about that. Honestly, I'm just going to accept all of this, but I think it's pretty cool to see how it has planned this out. So okay, so it does have some questions for me, which I like how it does that too. It makes me feel like I'm part of the process at least. Would you prefer a table view or card view? I'm going to say one. Let's go with a table view. I like to look at tables. Not everybody does, but that's my cup of tea. Priority features. Which features are most important? I'm going to say all 4 features are great ideas and important, but the basic history list is absolutely essential. 3, data to show what information is most valuable to display for each attempt. Challenge, let's go. Date, challenge title, result, ELO change, difficulty level, ELO change, and time taken. Please proceed with step 1 first. Cool. So we will let this start working. I like how it just has added now to my to-do list and it's going to start working through it. It asks me whenever it wants intervention to see if it basically will check with me before it runs any commands that are going to actually materially change the project or hit the database or anything like that. So now we're testing this API to see how it works. I like how it also gives you a bit more insight into like actually how the tool is working in the background. So it's saying I'm going to read X number of lines from this file. I'm going to search for this pattern to help me find the files that are going to impact the fixes that I want to, the fixes or additions that I want to apply here. It even shows you how some of these backend commands might work if you were to run them yourself. So we're doing some API testing now with actual data. They've created some test data for us, and then we're going to check if that works. So we're actually going to send a challenge result right now so that there is challenge history for the other API to return. So working through the process of the entire application. So now we're posting our result. We got it correct. That's great, considering Claude did it. Now we're going to test the history API. Testing pagination. So we're testing that all of the additional features that have been applied to this API work. And it looks like that worked. So it's going to mark this task complete. And now we're going to move on to some of these other tasks. It's interesting that add user profile and stats display. I think that popped up in the to-do list from where we were last time. That's okay though. So for those of you that are not patient with these tools, this could start to get annoying, but I've found that even though sometimes it seems like Claude Code's taking a little bit longer, it's actually saving me time compared to some other tools that might make quicker fixes that may not have as robust of an underlying structure. But let's see, we're going to give this not a whole lot more time. So we don't have any front end yet here. Nice. So yeah, I mean that I haven't had to do that before, but I just gave it the old reboot. We've got our API endpoint that's working great. It's got our structure that we wanted for the data structure. All of the features needed by the API are available. Here's a sample product response. So we can see how many points were earned. We can see our change in ELO, basically our rating change, how long it took to execute. And now we're going to do the front end work to build that challenge history page. So I'm going to say, yes, please proceed with step 2. In the meantime, I want to see what this context left until auto compact is. I am assuming that means that basically it's going to clear the conversation history. Yeah, cool. So Claude Code has a limited context window, meaning it can only hold a certain amount of information at a time. When the context window is nearing capacity, it automatically compacts the conversation. This involves summarizing the conversation history, keeping only the most relevant parts and discarding the rest. I like that. So this kind of lets us know how far we are until that auto compact occurs. So this is interesting. So letting auto compact happen at inconvenient times, like in the middle of a complex task, can disrupt the flow and make it harder to pick up where you left off. So that's good to know and keep in mind in the future because we're going to hit that pretty soon. And so I think obviously the idea would be if you're working through like a new feature, a new series of pages, you might want to manually compact the conversation history before it kind of loses that like in the moment context of what you're working through. So we'll see what happens here. We're getting dangerously close to that limit, but it looks like we might have actually gotten the front end working, which is awesome. So let's tab back over, give this the old refresh. Let's view our history. Sweet. That's pretty amazing. That page, nothing terribly special to it, but pretty awesome. That was just built in a few minutes. And so you can see here the idea for the app is like each date. Right now, it's allowing us to submit the same question multiple times in the same day. That won't be how it works moving forward, but shows you which question you or answer. I would love users to be able to click in here and kind of learn from their mistakes. Shows their ELO change by day, which is basically, again, a combination of was it correct, how fast did you answer it, how difficult was the problem. Time taken to solve, points received, average time, total points. Pretty sweet. We'll get some filtering in there eventually. We'll get some date range filtering in there, but pretty awesome to be able to just make quick changes like that for somebody like myself that is technical but is not a software engineer. It's like I can use Claude to help me get the framework of a prototype in place, and then I can, over time, I've started to learn how to code. Once the structure's there, I'm a lot more effective. I can figure out where everything lives, where I need to make changes if I need to make manual edits. And I can use other LLMs to like help me summarize the code base too. So it's a pretty great tool and hope everybody else can get some good use out of it too.